everyone. I'm sure most of you would have seen Harry Potter and referred to him as the boy who lived. Well, I'm also being referred as the same. I have evolved from a normal boy to the boy who got disabled and now to the boy who just does things differently. I am Kshitiz Aneja, who in all senses has disrupted the notion that differently abled cannot achieve greater things in life. There is a notion that we all must have heard, right from our childhood, that our destiny is in our hands. Is it really so? Do I believe that I have no destiny? Not necessarily. I was very active in all the sports right from my childhood, be it cricket, football, badminton, or even races. In northern part of our country, Basant Panchami is often celebrated as the festival of kites. And I was a big fan of it. The rush that I had during that time was just immense. So before that D-Day, all the preparations needed to be done, right from purchasing the kite to that manja, and everything needs to be set before we wake up the next morning. 22 years ago, I went to sleep waiting for it to dawn upon me. Little did I knew, the dawn of disruption was waiting for me and my family. 22 years ago, when my family woke me up, they were telling me that I was flying kites in my sleep as well and shouting Kaipo Che in the middle of night. So Kaipo Che is a common phrase referred to as I have won the kite. After having a hearty breakfast, I was all set and geared up to fly kites. And as I went to the terrace, for getting one kite, I had to reach some place. And as I went there, a high voltage of electricity struck me. A high voltage of 11,000 volts. 11,000 volts is good enough to kickstart batteries of 800 odd cars. It is good enough to provide for 47 odd households in India. That entire amount of energy was rushing through my body. It entered through my forelimbs and passed through my feet. I was almost unconscious for next 2 to 3 days. I was rushed to a hospital which was 5 hours away from my hometown. Nevertheless, it still resulted in amputation of both my forelimbs. My entire life had changed. I have changed. From a normal boy, I became the boy who survived. Upon the discharge, when I reached back home, there was a group of relatives who were waiting for me and dear ones who were there to wish me a speedy recovery. Then I realized I wasn't just the boy who survived. I was the boy who lost both his forelimbs just for a kite, which was not even worth a rupee at that time. I will be the one they'll often refer to as the disabled one. Many even questioned that death might have been a better fate for me than the state that I was in. I was just 10 years old, and they were thinking, who will marry this guy after this accident? It was even advised to my parents to not spend money on my education, as eventually I would have to sit on my father's shop. Today, to all those people who had lost faith in me, I want to tell you, I have worked for 6 years in top 2 renowned brands of the world. I have completed my post-graduation from #1 college across India. I know IMA students can doubtedly debate about it. I completed my graduation from SRCC, the finest college across Asia for commerce. But yeah, like once I was back, my parents had to go through a lot. It was tougher for them than it was for me. But it was all new for them as it was for me. So we had no guide, we had no one to look up to, how to do things, how to proceed further. They tried their best to give me a normal childhood as possible. I started going back to the same old school which I was in. 2 years later, my mother was still doing my writing work. And I just thought to myself that if I'm trying to get back a normal life and get back to schooling system, shouldn't I try to write on my own as well? But the inner me just called to me, "Stupid, you have lost your 4 limbs, how will you write?" I replied, "I can still try." So I tried, first with my mouth. But it was very tiring, and I couldn't compete with other students because we have to complete exam in a certain amount of time. So after that, I tried with my feet. A good idea indeed. I was rather successful in it. But again, the speed became a problem. And finally, a good idea came to my mind. I used both my 4 limbs to hold that pen. And that was it. My eureka moment. That one moment gave me hope that I can still live a normal life. I'm talking about 20 years back, when technology wasn't that advanced. I still tried prosthetics because I wanted to be independent, although they were a little uncomfortable because the straps were all tied to my shoulder and back. I went wearing those bulky hands to the school for 2 long years. I was feeling more like an Iron Man, or maybe more like an Iron Fist at that time. But I know as soon as I came back from the school, I just rushed to my parents to just get these off. They were bulky and had limited functionalities. I was still dependent on my parents. So they didn't solve any purpose for me. So 2 years later, I decided to let them go and started accepting the changed version of me. I started accepting that I might not have a normal life after all. Sooner the better, right? After that, after high school, the most exciting phase of one's life comes, that one has to choose a college and enjoy the best days that one has to live. Oh boy, I wish it was that easy for me. I was 18 years old, an adult by the age, but the one who was still dependent on his parents for everything. Literally everything that you can imagine being in my shoes. I was good in accountancy, hence CA was given as an option to me because it didn't require leaving my hometown, or rather, leaving my parents whom I was dependent upon. College was nothing more than a dream to me. I started CA, was rather good at it as well, but I was getting suffocated from inside. I knew I didn't survive that accident just to live a normal life. I was meant to do something, to explore it. And one such fine day, I decided to have the talk with my parent. And luckily, I was able to convince them, and it was decided that you can have a go while continuing with your CA coaching in Delhi and have a go at your so-called independent life that you so much aspire. I was so happy. I was so happy that I'm going to get a chance. I was just happy in that. Those 3 months those 3 months living alone in Delhi paved way for my life ahead. It opened doors to my way of living, to my jugars. Jugars are basically things which I developed for myself, which enable me in eating myself, in dressing up on my own, in traveling to metro alone. And I tell you, I have failed. I failed so many times, I can't even remember. And sometimes in life, I think there is a phase for everyone that you know inside that you are struggling. But you should also know, it is not great to start, but you should always start to be a great. And that feeling of struggle suddenly becomes so empowering with each success in my jugars, my way of living. I was able to do things, although a little bit differently, but I was independent, and hence started my journey. So after that, it was just a start. CA, then SRCC, then IIM Bangalore. Academically, I achieved what wasn't just my dream, but rather a dream of so many students even now. But I personally feel that those degrees are not my biggest achievements. My biggest achievements are those 3 months, the learnings that I had in those 3 months living alone in Delhi. They are my biggest achievement. From the boy who was disabled, I was slowly transforming to the boy who does things differently. And while I was there in my college, my parents taught me to be who I am. And I am so grateful to be loved by my dear ones, my friends, and my wife to be for who I am. I met my wife during my undergraduation in SRCC. We were part of the same class. We became in the common group of friends. We moved to closer friends. We moved to best friends before we finally confessed our feelings for one another. We have gone through 10 years of friendship. Yes, we both still like to refer each other as best friends for one another. We have traveled a lot together, survived 3 years of long distance relationship, even witnessed 6 months where we didn't even see each other. But she never stopped supporting me. She always had my back. And let me tell you, as a fact, even in today's society, it is still very difficult for any parent of especially a normal boy or a normal girl or a normal bodied individual to marry a differently abled individual. I'm telling this from my experience, as I have had experience to listen to stories of so many in my peer, how they tell me that they were so in love, but their partner's parent won't just agree because they are differently abled. Thank you, love. Thank you, Shivangi, for everything. Thank you, in-laws, for accepting me, for accepting us. I know it wasn't an easy decision to make. So challenges are in everyone's life. Some might be more visible than others, like me, but I believe everyone is fighting their own battle. And no matter how big or small someone else's battle might seem to you, they all deserve your compassion. Because ultimately, the solution to all the problems are going through 3 steps. First, acknowledging the problem. Second, never back away from a fight. And last, optimize the solution so much that one day it just stops being a problem. it looks more like a menial task. And before I give it a stop, I would like to tell you I have personally practiced that first step. If I didn't realize that I have to live my life differently, I have to figure out my own ways or my own jugaad, I wouldn't be standing in front of you. As the famous quote from Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones goes, never forget what you are, because the world never will. Wear it like an armor, and it can never be used to hurt you again. Thank you so much. Thank you.